Welcome back to the Coaches Unscripted Podcast. I'm your host, Trey Belcher. With me, as always, my tag team partner, Corey Smallwood. How's it going, Corey?
What's up, Trey? How you doing?
Everything is excellent. Today, we've got a special one that I've really been looking forward to for a long time. Joining us today is one of the top guys of the fitness industry, speaker, author, owner of Results Fitness in Santa Clarita, California, and most importantly, a two-time cancer survivor, Alwyn Cosgrove. Welcome in, Alwyn.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
It's one I've been looking forward to shooting the breeze with you for a long time. So to get into it, and we were talking before we came on, one of the big things that you always touch on in your talks, and you don't really get to delve too deep into it, is the impact of your mentor. You know, you talk about Derek Campbell so much and so lovingly, and I want to just delve into the relationship that you guys had when you were young and how that's continued to grow and develop, and the impact that he's had on your life and your business and your coaching style.
It's funny that you say that you had. I texted him on Saturday with a challenge that I'm having. So I still talk to him about certain things. Yeah, he was my taekwondo instructor. I was just a kid. He actually wasn't my first taekwondo instructor. I was under an instructor who ran multiple taekwondo schools, and I was in one of them. Derek was his student too. Then this instructor, the guy's name was Tom McCallum. He moved to work for the International Taekwondo Federation in Austria. He moved to like a high level position, and he handed the schools over to we used to call him Mr. C. He's now a Grand Master in Taekwondo, but you always were respectful to your coach. It was Mr. Campbell at the time. It's now a Grand Master Campbell. So he took over the schools then, and it really was like I don't know if it was me that changed or he was just a different coach, but my career kind of took off from that. And the big story I remember is my dad lost his job. The economy wasn't great in Scotland back in the days, and my dad lost his job. He was made redundant, which is a lesson I guess I've taken into business too, is that it wasn't his fault. He worked really hard. It just the company fell short, and he wasn't in control of his own finances, which is one of the... I mean, there's risks opening your own business, but I feel like other than certain situations, you can create your own destiny a little bit. So we've all had this, right, as coaches, where you've got a client who just kind of disappears, right? And you like, what happened there? And I realized that we weren't going to be able to afford lessons anymore. And I just, I don't know, at a young age, just felt like I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to go up and explain as to why we can't afford lessons anymore. He said, always said he teaches me for free. He didn't. He gave me an opportunity. He made me an instructor. I was only a red belt at the time. And he made me an instructor to teach the kids class. And I took it very seriously, and I would show up early before the kids class started to get ready for what we were doing. And then he just kind of really became a mentor in all things in my life, like to the point where like I was discussing something with him. I'm like, hey, here's my issue going on. How did you handle this when you're younger? Like, how do you... I was asking him. I remember, like, fast forward, as a result of him giving me this opportunity to be an instructor, I went on and I got my black belt when I was 14. I won the Nationals, the Great Britain Nationals 7 times. Went to the Euros, medaled at Euros and World Championships. And as a result of that, I was able to get it was really a work permit. It wasn't a green card at the time. It was a work permit to come and teach in the US and doing taekwondo. That guy says, if he just says, hey, you can't afford it, and he's like, I understand, I'll see you when your dad gets a job again. Who knows, right? I'm maybe having a different life now, but he's like, you'll be back on Wednesday and you'll help me teach the kids class, and that's how you'll pay lessons. I think the story gets lost a little bit because I've said like he taught me for free. He didn't. That wasn't it. He gave me an opportunity, and I said this before. Opportunity looks a lot like work, and that's when I got a job to teach taekwondo. And some of my jokes with him is that for everything that I did, it would probably been cheaper for me just to pay him. Right? But no, I can't. My life is entirely different because of that man. Just hope that one day somebody's life is different because of me, and that's how it's paid forward. But he's one of the I'm studying coaching and high level group dynamics and coaching dynamics to this day. I'm like, DC said that in 1989. Little things like how do you handle the fear as you're stepping into the ring to fight. And he's like, just remember the other guy feels exactly the same. So what you do next is going to make the difference. Just like it's little sound bites like that. I don't even think he remembers saying to them. I said something to the other day. I've been the head coach for the US National Obstacles Course team for the last 2 World Championships, and I have for various business reasons, and I'm not going to do it this year. But I've got 8 athletes that actually personally have qualified. So I might be going, right? And I was suggesting, how do you handle that when I don't know if I can be trackside with them? Like if you can't, because I was at the time I was on the national team and he wasn't the national coach, right? And I was like, how did you, like, you didn't make me feel like I was alone. And I was asking him for hints on that. He goes, just like understand the rules, understand this, go to the umpires meetings to see what they're looking for so you understand everything inside it. And that was some of the lessons. And I remember one he told me, I was fighting once, and he goes, there's 4 guys here on the corner, they call themselves judges. They're not judges, they're not good enough to judge you, they're just going to watch what you're going to do. And just like, it makes you a little cocky when you go in the ring, right? But he just was, like I said, I aspire to beat him. You know, he's just turned 66, told me the other day. So, and he's the type of coach, honestly, Trey, that he could coach me against you, and I would kick the shit out of you for the first round. And if he changed sides and coached you the second round, you would kick the shit out of me. There's that much of a difference maker.
Yeah, well, that's 66. I picture him as, this wise old guru. He was young when he was coaching you.
Taekwondo at the time in Europe was like you could hit a certain rank and they force you to retire because there weren't a lot of high rank guys. So I think I remember him. I was teaching the junior class on his 30th birthday. So wow. You think about that, like he'd created a national champion. At 30 years old, he'd created a senior men's national champion. Like that's the part I kind of like forget, because you think he's Mr. Miyagi then, right?
Right.
He was to me, but it was. It just was. I was perhaps his first student to go through this. I don't know. Maybe there was one before me, but I know he became he was just a taekwondo fighter himself until his instructor left, which was our same as a low rank belt then. But when his instructor left, he became an instructor, and he went full time after that. So I was one of the first people when he was full time. But yeah, I still, like I said, I still talk to him. I still I'll run into things and still ask him for advice.
That was one thing I was curious about, is how has the relationship changed as you've grown and become a business owner and accomplished so much? Is he still the same Derek Campbell in your mind that he was back then?
I think when it comes to coaching stuff, yeah, like he's just done it at a level that most people never do. Like he was the Great Britain team coach, and then they went to they divided back to what they call the Four Nations. So Scotland, England, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales competed separately. It was a combined British team for a while. Then he was the Scottish head coach for years, and then when he stepped down from that, Northern Ireland picked him up to coach their guys. So he's coaching at international world championships at a level like most. There's very few people. There's no fitness international coaches. Like you'll occasionally get like Mark Verstegen was with the US men's national team for soccer and the German national teams. For multiple years, he was the head coach. As I kind of fell into that role the last couple of years for World Obstacle. I was asking him, like, how you're coaching athletes you'd never, like, every athlete you've ever coached, you're there week in, week out, right? Now you got to go to an event with an athlete that's been selected that you don't see day to day, and you got to build this trust right away. You got to build this rapport so that they can trust you. And so I asked him that. But what's crazy to me is, and I've said this before, I've been in the US now longer than I ever was in Scotland, right? I've been here most of my life. So I started Taekwondo in 83, but he wasn't my coach until maybe 85, 86. And then I went to college in England in 92 and moved out here in 95. So he was only my coach really I still think he's my coach, but I was only there 6 years, right, on the regular basis. But, I think everybody has people in their life, and it's, like you remember coaches for various reasons. Some of them are, for negative reasons, and some are for positive reasons. And it's a line that stole from Martin Mooney, is that we all have those guys in our lives. The question is, what memory are they making of you? They remember you as the crappy coach, they remember you as the good coach that they'll talk about on a podcast 20 years later.
Right. And I challenge my coaches with that exact same thing is, you have a handful of coaches that you've experienced in your life that are very positive. You remember everything about them. You remember their name. You also remember the names of the ones that were terrible. But 90% of the coaches that you have ever had are forgettable, and you don't remember them. And so, like you said, which one of those three pots do you want to fall into?
Yeah, the thing is that did they I had this kind of saying, like, when you're working with clients, you don't take the credit because you don't take the blame. Great athletes make average coaches look good, but I said to you the other day, Corey, is, hey, I can't do it for them, but just maybe they couldn't do it without me. We're in a young generation where if you're a martial arts instructor, you had a martial arts instructor who had a martial arts instructor, and you can look at this lineage, and we're still like the first generation in fitness, and we don't have that yet. Right, we're not. I've got guys coming up under me who I hope will remember me in the future as being part of their development. But we're kind of still first generation. The guys that I felt were above me, like Al Vermeil and Mike Boyle, they're still kind of doing it. Right? I think Al may have retired, but we're not like 3 generations back, right? So we're still very young, where this legacy is not a thing. But I think in other sports, a swimming coach at one point had a swimming coach who had a swimming coach, right? Like there's this sort of lineage that I think is very powerful, and particularly in martial arts. And we think it's something that's missing in fitness, is this kind of mentor-mentee relationship, not just on the business side of things, but just on how to coach. I think that will happen in the future. Is I think there'll be some type of model of like an 18-year-old gets their cert with the certified functional strength coach and becomes a coach in training under me, right? Assists me, teaching a few, maybe there's warm-ups, maybe there's things, and it develops their own skill set, and that's how they grow, as opposed to you get your 2-day cert and hey, you're free, go feed on the masses. I think that's the part. That relationship, and used to be a joke amongst my friends. They called it a puppet. Like they said, my friends called me a puppet. That Derek Campbell works the strings and you just kick the shit out of people. Because now it's like a video game where you just and I just do what I want. And it's closer to the truth than I'd like to admit. It is. I think that I see that, as you were touching on earlier. Like I'll remember things that he said, and I'll have said it, and then I'll catch one of my coaches saying it, and it's just this kind of little moment, right, where you're like, man, look at that. Right, like it's. I had one that I know I used to say is like strength training is a cheat code, right? If you could do what strength training does, it would be banned in a pill form. It would be banned in sports. It would be banned as being too dangerous, right? And I heard one of my coaches say that once, and I was like, I know you did got that one from me. Right? Not with that one yourself.
Well, that's one thing that we're trying to do with this podcast, is connect all those stories, because we tend to live in our silos, and for us coaches who are actually coaching, you don't necessarily have the time to seek out all of this information from you, or from Martin, or from Ray, or Boyle, or you name the guys that have been doing it for so long. So this is our little way of trying to get this information out to the younger trainer, to the people who haven't experienced it yet, or haven't had the ability to learn from an Alwyn Cosgrove. The stories, the things that made you who you are, and made Derek Campbell who he was. These are the things that shrink the world down and connect us and keep us all together, and help us build the industry and create those connections that are going to make us all better going forward.
Yeah, there's more. There's an art, right? Like there is a science to it that you can get from books, and you can get that, but there's like sometimes you'll watch me coach, and I'll be face to face with someone. I'm like, all right, here's what I need you to do. And other times I'm kind of side by side, like I'm coaching alongside them. And I think a junior coach doesn't know what their personality style is. A good coach knows they can only coach a certain personality style, and then they make sure that they only match on that. And a great coach changes their personality for the athlete or the client in front of them. When I'll get asked, like, hey, what's advice for a young up-and-coming coach? I'm like, you should be working under the best coach in your town. Because that's the reality. Is like, my coaches, I want to say largely because of me, just because of our environment, are so much better than I was at that time when I was trying to come up and figure out some things by myself. Like, they don't have to figure out. I've had 2 young coaches recently, and I'm like, listen, here's the recipe. Here's what I've come up with over the years, and you don't have to figure it out. You just start here. Let's start here and go. Like, I'll take you. I'm pretty sure you're smart, and if you do this for 25 something years, you're going to come up to something that looks a little bit like this, right? Mm-hmm. Where you get to go with it now. You get the recipe right now, and you can go forward with it. Like I'm not keeping anything back from you. I'm going to share everything that I have, and I think it's the missing link. And I think, unfortunately, like post-lockdown, live events have went way down, attendance is way down, and things like this or like podcasts and Zoom calls, I think they're all great, and they're all just additions. There's nothing to that little conversations in the hallways and stuff. I had a girl at PB at Long Beach, maybe 2020, just when we first started back, maybe even before that. And she come up to me at the end of my lecture and goes, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And she just said something like "I love that, and I just was going to quit the industry because I've had a bad experience at the gym I've been working at with the owner there, and I've had a horrible time, and I just, do you have any advice?" And I talked to her for a little bit, and then anybody that I saw walking by, I was like, "Hey, come over, talk to this girl." This girl's name was Haley. Come over and talk to Haley. Come over and talk to Haley. And fast forward, Haley's still in the profession 4 years later and is killing it, right? But that doesn't happen on a Zoom, right? Like she doesn't get to hang out afterwards and get to ask me a question. She's just like to see her, just young kid hanging out at the back of the room waiting to ask me a question, and it just was like there's some value in just getting some FaceTime with someone who's like I use the phrase been there, done that, and still doing it right now, right? So it's but there are, I think, for young coaches, you got to get around people who've been on this path before you. You don't have to figure it out on your own. It's silly to try to do that, actually.
I think that's the best advice to give to a up and coming coach is to find that mentor, find that teacher to learn from, because there's so much information easily accessible to them through YouTube and through Instagram and social media and all these video clips and martial arts. You learn the kicks and the punches, but that's the martial side of it. You need to learn the why, the artistry of it. And there is definitely an artistry to coaching that you learn much quicker and exponentially from learning from a master, a top coach in the area, or a mentor. And I think a lot of the newer coaches have so much access and availability to information that they're just, I'm going to cherry pick here, and they never really learn.
It might be a negative now that I did my my dissertation, my undergrad, on creatine supplementation, which is, to be fair, creatine has stood the test of time now, right? Like so many supplements have come and go, it's still going. But I remember having to go, for young people listening, you used to have to go to a place called the library, which had books, and you had to physically go and look at. And I had to go to the journals and look at the journal article and read it to see if this thing about creatine was relevant. And then I had to photocopy it, so I had a copy of it, right? Now, if you typed it into Google, there's more information than you could read. If you devoted the rest of your life to reading it, there's more information there. So where I was coming up trying to find the answers, right, and try to find information, I think these young coaches nowadays, it's such at their fingertips that they need to learn two things. One, they need to learn problem solving, because the answer is just right there, right? And two, they need to learn how to filter out, because there's some junk out there too, right? That's a different skill set. I got one from John Berardi when he was running Precision Nutrition, and people would go on their nutrition program. He'd ask them to go on a fitness and nutrition fast, information fast, that you're not going to read anything else for a while, right? For the next 12 weeks, I'll give you all I got. I'm giving you the best I have. It goes out, but I'll go over with you later why. But for the next 12 weeks, if I just say you're going to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, I don't need you saying, hey, Mikey, the nutritionist, says to do 1.1, right? Or because I need you to go on a fast. So I think there's a skill set for a young coach nowadays is how do you filter out what is junk? And I think you need a person to help you with that. I don't think you can set that up on as a Google filter or AI prompt. You've got to be talking to some real people to get some information there. We've had a joke that Google killed the pub argument, right?
Right. They'd be like, I got you.
We don't have to speculate.
Right so, here. I got the answer.
We're in like little debates like that. But yeah, I think it's there is an art to it, and there's fastest learn from an instructor to student, right? Like, and if you had to have an MMA fight 12 weeks from now, and you're going to fight a monster, and I gave you access to anything you wanted, any YouTube course, any books, any streaming platform, anything you want, what would you choose? You would choose a good instructor, right? In person to help you, and some great training partners, right? Yeah. So there's no education. I'm a big believer in, but I think mentorship is lacking with young coaches, and it's I just know how much of And I've had many others. I've had guys that, in different areas that have helped me. But Derek Campbell was my first, and I still want to be him when I grow up.
So you become a champion, you come to the States on your work permit, and you're here, and eventually you open up a gym. And throughout hearing you talk, it wasn't always as successful as it is now. It wasn't always seemingly as easy as it is now. Not to say that it's easy. All three of us here are running businesses. And we know how. So take us through the start of Results Fitness and the lean times that taught you a lot of lessons to get you to where you are now, and being a mentor for others through Results Fitness University and things like that.
So the story is ended up working at taught Taekwondo summer camp. Finished all my college stuff, and I did one more year coming over to teach Taekwondo, and you had to fight in order to keep it. You had to do a tournament, and then my last year I then got an extension, and I worked at a hotel in the Catskills, New York, which is the actual area where the Dirty Dancing sort of films. Kids won't remember that movie, but it was like a sort of Jewish holiday resorts that the Jewish people go up for the summer. So I worked at one of those as a lifeguard. If you know anything about me, there's downtime when you're a lifeguard, and so I took up another job there, which was called they called it athletic staff, but it was really just laying out chairs and for a dance, or laying out tables for dinner. And we were setting up this kind of box thing, and downstairs, this big kind of box, and it was. I couldn't figure out what it was, and we couldn't get it right. Like, we're trying to put it together. I kind of went back to my room, and I figured out what we had to do, and I went back down. It turns out it was a boxing ring, and there was a boxing manager down there, Jim Fennell, and a boxing coach called Georgie Benton. People follow boxing, don't know those names. And they were having a boxing camp for 6 weeks, and I heard them say, there's a guy, Alex Stewart, who was a fighter who went on to. He fought Holyfield twice, George Foreman, who's just passed recently. Alex passed a few years. We fought Mike Tyson in one of Mike Tyson's fights, and Alex was coming up to fight a guy, Darren something, I can't remember that guy's name. And they were saying that his conditioning coach had retired or moved away. And he goes, we just need to get somebody to help him with that. So opportunity looks a lot like work, right? So now I take on a third job of basically, it starts off with, I just ran with Alex in the morning doing his program. We go to the gym later in the evening and do his program. And over the weeks, it evolved to like I ran the program, right? And he was very grateful. So we went to Foxwoods, Connecticut for the fight. And you can't be a full-time fitness coach with a single fighter because they only fight so many times a year. So that kind of contract's ending at this fight. But while we're there, I see the New York Times, and the New York Times is a feature on personal trainers, right? So I've still got a valid work permit. I just got to do a fight later, right? Like, I'll figure that out. And it's on a personal trainer. So there's 5 gyms mentioned in New York City. And I just sent my resume to all 5, and I got a job at one of them. And fast forwarding from that, I ended up getting another job in New York that year. And then I met a girl called Rachel Casper, who's now my wife. We've been married 25 years. So we moved to California. Just the jump from me doing Taekwondo, opening a gym, there's a few steps in there, Trey. I just wanted to be clear. We were out here, and it was I'd moved back to Scotland for a little while, and we were trying to decide if Rachel would move there or I'd move here. And then nothing was really happening career-wise. Like, there wasn't. I was just running into a wall. I was trying to be a strength coach for pro soccer in the UK, and because I kind of knew me and Rachel would get married, but now you're the legal adjustment of status to become a green card through marriage is a little longer than it sounds, and the citizenship path takes longer. So you had to decide, are you going to go there, or are we going to go to Scotland? I thought I'd have more opportunities in Scotland being a strength and conditioning coach, but that didn't exist then in the UK. It didn't exist in England. One of my friends, Nick Grantham, who's he did Taekwondo with me. He's one of the guys that accused me of being a puppet with Derek Campbell. He his first ever job out of college, he went to the same college as me, a couple of years behind me. His first ever job when I was already moved back here was the strength coach for the Great Britain Olympic gymnastics team. like his first ever training job, national head coach, right? And he's now the strength coach for Newcastle United Football Club. Like he's a fantastic coach. But the timing was just wrong for me. And they were just like, they didn't have this role that now exists. Like, it's kind of weird now to think of it. There wasn't a thing. There wasn't a fitness coach at pro sport in England, any team. There's maybe a former player who did the warm-ups, right? Now they've got full sports science departments, GPS, HRV tracking, but it didn't exist then. So sometimes when a door gets closed to you, you're so busy focusing on the door that's closed that you miss other opportunities. I decided, you know what, maybe this is just the end, and I'm just going to teach taekwondo. I won't do fitness. I'll just teach taekwondo. Where do I want to teach that? Rainy, cold Scotland, where I got to compete with Derek Campbell's, go to sunny California. So the original idea was, well, if I had to just work in Starbucks, Southern California would be better. Like part of this is, I teach this when I do business talks, is that you don't get in business to run a business, you get in business to enhance your life, right? And to get that. And so you start with that in mind. Like, where do you want to live? What do you want to do? And then how do you want to make money to pay for it? Not the other, what do you want to do and what will you spend your money on? Like, you do it backwards. So we moved out here and I started working at a local gym, and they did like a fitness contest, like a transformation contest. And I just recruited somebody in every age group, like every male and female at every age group, and I won everything. I just had my guys won everything, and then I just did not enjoy being at the gym at all. And I started doing the math and said, right, the cut I was given the gym, and we'll have this with staff under you. You guys will all have these stories. I realized the cut I was given the gym could cover the rent at this place, because I thought that's all that happened was I gave this gym a cut. And so I would be financially better off if I moved down the street and opened my own place. Oh my goodness, what a deal I had at this place. They would hand me clients, right? I remember giving the front desk girls at this gym $5 if they booked all the new clients with me. So I met every new client and sold them training, right? And it would just be like a $5 hookup, for them to put them with me. Now I'm at my own place, and I realize that $5, I can't give anybody $5 to do this, right? I've got to market, I've got to buy equipment, I've got to bill. And so young coaches sitting there listening, sometimes working for a gym, it wasn't as bad a deal as you thought. Right? So I'd worked at a gym in New York, and I'd moved out here, and then we opened Results Fitness, which at the time was one-on-one training. And it was about 600 square feet of gym floor. One thing I have been lucky at is that we've expanded. We're open 25 years this year, and I haven't had to move. I've been able to expand in the same area and knock down walls. So I think that's pretty rare. I would say that there's a little bit of that. It's not just being good. It's that the timing was good. The other businesses went under in our area, and I've been able to expand there. But yeah, the biggest thing I think is that, you remember the movie Field of Dreams? And everybody does this quote, build it and they will come. You heard that? That's not even the quote. The quote is build it and he will come. A single guy. So you can build a gym. One guy might come. And it would be your dad who won't pay, right? This idea, I would go, build it and they will come. That's not the quote. It's build it and he will come. And I was his dad. So that's not true. I felt at the time I was probably, I was a black belt at training, right? I was a white belt in business and marketing and operations, and that's not enough, because this is the first thing that I ever turned pro at, right? And you don't have the skill set, you have a piece of the skill set, right? And I heard this from Dave Tate of Elite Fitness, that there's a lot of coaches out there who are PhDs in training, but you got C-level high school students as clients. You've got a knowledge base that's so much higher than you need, because you got to take that C-level high school student and try to get him to a B or a straight A, right? You don't need your knowledge, and that's coaching skills. Right, I knew everything about the medial head of the deltoid, but I didn't know a whole lot about communication. I was better than I'm saying, but marketing and things like that. There's a whole skill set around running a business that you've got to be as excited about that and be selling T-shirts as you are about it and selling training. You've got to be as excited about it and learning that so much, because the big picture of you're selling a service. If you change the service, you should still want to learn this stuff. So there's a lot of people like, man, I think it'd be great being a coach, man. This is so much fun. It's fun being coached. It's not fun when you're back to back. And I tell you, my coaches are better than me, because I'm like, shit, I got to order that product. Oh, I got to do this. I got to get out of here. I got to do the Coaches Unscripted podcast. I got to do this. My coaches are better than me because they're focused solely on that. and they don't have to worry about the marketing plan. They don't have to worry about the credit card fees we got to negotiate. They don't have to worry about any of that. So I think the challenges are understanding right away. I forget who came up with this, and it may have been Stephen Covey, that level 1 is unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you're doing. You don't even know that you don't know what you're doing. That's where I was, right? And then the next level is you don't know what you're doing and you're aware of it. And that is the most depressing part in the world. Because you're like, I thought it would be easier than that. And then as you come up to the levels, then you eventually get to the level of like you know what you're doing, but you have to think about it. Like you're always aware of it, and then eventually it's unconscious competence that you're good at it. But that's for every skill set in the business. We opened in 2000, and then finally started figuring it out. I guess I'm credited with inventing semi-private training, which I don't think I did, but I do know I didn't have anybody ask about it. Like I just I didn't have anybody to run it by. And then in 2004, I was exhausted all the time. I was wondering about the business model, and I just was tired. And I started taking Friday afternoons off just to shorten my week a little bit. I had staff doing it. And then instead of working Wednesdays, I wrote all the programs for the gym every Wednesday. So I was just programming once a week for the gym. And then I was still exhausted all the time, and I was part-time. And eventually I went to the doctors and I said, I don't know what's going on, and I've got weird anxiety, and just did a bunch of tests. The hormones came back all wacky. They tried an antidepressant. It just shot my liver enzymes up. So I went back. I didn't do that. He was looking at, maybe doing some other stuff. And then where I was there, goes, by the way, I found this lump in my thigh. And I remember his face just changing. And we ordered a biopsy, and it was cancer, stage 4 cancer. So at that point, all your worries about the gym kind of go out the window, right? Like you're not too concerned about how many sessions Mrs. Jones has left. You got to deal with that. So that was that changed a lot of things for me. And so I did chemotherapy for about 6 months, and I went into remission, and I never really felt any better. Almost a year to the day on my checkup date, I had relapsed. I was back in stage 4. Just for people who don't know, there's no stage 5. Stage 4 is the end. I guess there is a stage 5. That guy died from cancer. Go on, you can laugh at that. Sorry, it's me. I made it. So that year I moved into UCLA, and I was there in isolation for a while, and I had a stem cell transplant. And so that was 18 years ago. And the one thing that there is a strange survivor's guilt around cancer, because some people don't make it, right? And they fought just as hard as I did, and they did everything the same. So there is a weird feeling with that. The thing that I'm sort of proud of is during that time, I didn't work at all, and the business grew and continued to grow because we had systems in place. And I remember sitting in the hospital thinking, how do I write a program? I got to teach somebody how to do this. What goes through my head when I'm writing a program? It's kind of evolved over the years. We've got our program design book behind me that I was trying to get out of my, and now it's evolved because all my guys have input, and it's not really mine anymore. Like all the courses I've been to and all the courses they've been to and everything, it's become like the way we do things. But I remember thinking, how do I write that? How can I teach this? And coming up with these sort of templates that could work with people. And so, yeah, the cancer itself was the time. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't the best, but the thing that I kind of hold my head up on that is that coming out the other end, a lot of people, their business couldn't have survived that length of time, never mind grow. So that's the one thing that I think that learning those other skills about business that weren't just training. If I could, just as a young coach, you got to learn how to train. Coaching and writing programs are different, and then there's you've got to learn some business. And I know young coaches have a hard time with older clients just because you got nothing in common. You got to learn that. You've got to figure out how to have something in common with that client, and then you got to learn to how can this. You don't go to this is a plumber line from years ago. You don't go to McDonald's on a Tuesday because Mikey's working. You go because it's consistent, right? And the product's the same. And trainers hear McDonald's and think junk food, low quality fries, don't like the burgers. Where business owners see the system, right, and how effective that replication is, and that's the magic. You want to have a high quality product. If you forget McDonald's, you go to a high end steakhouse. You're going because of the system. Gordon Ramsay owns 90 restaurants globally. He can only be at one, right? But the system is the key. And that's what we've tried to come up with at Results Fitness. And it was a lot of that was discovered when I was in the hospital, realizing that the doctor doesn't come and give you the chemo. He's written this plan and this system. And I remember wondering, like, should I go to Cedars-Sinai, and where should I go for this? Where's the best in the world? And then you realize that they all share best practices. Like, you're not going to get a different treatment at USC or you would do if you went to Cedars-Sinai in New York. You're going to get the best. They share it, and you're like, this, like, at that level, we're not. I've always said this, like I believe in individualizing training programs, right? But it kind of gets misinterpreted that you don't want to hire me and have a program no one's ever done before in life, right? Same as you don't want to go to a doctor who's like, I'm going to try some shit right now. Let me come up with something cool and we'll do it. You're like, no, I want the thing that works, right? So I'm like, I'll individualize it, but maybe the range of motion or the exercise selection will tweak or the loads will tweak. But when you got a recipe that works, you got a system that works. Like, that's the part of doing business. So, and it's all these little, I did a talk a few years ago for Perform Better. I think you can still get it on the app, called The Ripple Effect. There's all these little moments in your life that had and my mom died when I was in college. If my mom hadn't passed away, I don't know if I'd have finished college. If my dad had passed away, I know I wouldn't have. I'd have stayed to look after her. I don't know if I'd have moved to the US if she hadn't died. I can assure you, if she hadn't died, we wouldn't be having this conversation now, because I wouldn't be a gym owner in California, right? So there's like that ripple as your day has changed because of it, something that happened in '94. And there's people running the Results Fitness programming system that wouldn't have been written if I didn't get sick, right? Because I wouldn't have understand systems. So, and everybody has these in their lives, right? Everybody's had these same ripples. I'm just able to, I can identify mine because I moved countries, and I can identify big turning points. And I think most of us, you talk, Corey, about going from like a performance training facility to adult fitness, just from the ripple of the kind of lockdown thing, right? Things change through, sometimes not even like hardcore decisions, but it's, there's a movie, Sliding Doors, right? With Gwyneth Paltrow, and the movie's in London. And she goes down the stairs to get on the subway at the subway station, and gets on the train, and the doors close and the screen splits, and she misses the train, and how her life is different because of that little thing. But man, that screws with your head too much, because you're like, if we finish this podcast now, right? There is I call it like the ripple effect, and it's I'm proud a little bit of some of the ripples that, like, my coach doesn't train me for free. I'm definitely not in the US, right? There's because there was no taekwondo work permit, work visa that way. So there's a lot of little things like that I'm very appreciative of.
We talk so much about, you call it the ripples. When we had Martin on, it was looking back at the light posts. And these are the things, those connections, those are the stories. And hopefully we're going to look back, Corey and I will look back in 5 years, 10 years, however long, and we look back at starting the podcast as one of those ripples or one of those light posts. And we all catch up here, in the next 3 months, we can sit around and talk about this as hopefully a ripple. And that's the essence of what we're doing here. And to be able to share these stories. So man, I don't
go to that Perform Better talk in Long Beach those years ago. That little kid, Haley, doesn't ask me a question. Maybe she gets out of the industry, does something else. And maybe she goes on to be the greatest coach there's ever been. Right? And she's helps a client lose 100 pounds of body fat and saves their life. And that client's daughter goes on to become the president of the world. I don't know how far the ripples reach. And sometimes something that seems insignificant at the time comes on to be huge.
And hopefully Haley's listening. And Haley, if you are listening, make sure you reach out and find us. And
I always say, make sure you pay it forward. You don't need to thank me. You pay it. Your job is to pay it forward. If we do that, we can change the world.
So you get through the cancer, you develop your systems, and then you say, if this has worked for me, then how can I help other trainers, other gym owners, business owners? And you start Results Fitness University and the mentorship. What was how did that go from, working for you to trying to make it work for others?
So if there's a line from Michael Dell from Dell Computers that if you listen to your customer, the answers are there. like, you know what your next move is. So after I'd been sick, I'd done a couple of speaking engagements, and I was approached by Chris Poirier from Perform Better to speak with them. And this was actually just before I relapsed. So I did one talk, and then I was out for another year and a half. And I came back, and I was talking about like, it was I call it the evolution of personal training, was the idea. And I was really talking about the move to understanding that the skill set for programming and coaching that maybe didn't lie within the same person. You might have to have two different departments there. We shouldn't be billing by sessions. We should do monthly billing or bi-weekly or some type of recurring time-based commitment. And I think one-on-one is kind of an outdated concept. It doesn't make sense based on group dynamics or anything like that. And I would just mention something about like semi-private and how I would structure it and program it. And then the questions I got at the end, I always had this thing at PB, the first time you do a talk, you're going to have questions. And the second time, you should put those questions in your talk so you answer them ahead of time. So by the third or fourth time you did it, you've answered all the questions they have, and that you're proud that there's no questions by the 10th one, right? I was still getting questions about how to do it, not like how do you build that? How do you schedule it? Do you match them together? And then, and everyone's like, hey, can I come out and just hang out? And I always said, like, yeah, you can come by and visit any time, but you don't get time with me away from my clients. Like, I can't just, drop everything because there's a visitor. And then we just kind of reformulated. It was, you know what? I had a friend I went to college with running a gym in England, and the best trainer of his gym won an all expenses paid trip to intern with me for a week. That was their prize, right? They come and they just hung around, and I would give them an hour a day to learn. We had an internship program where we did an hour a day of teaching, the rest was shadowing. And then we just had an idea that, hey, you can come out for a week. We're doing it 5 days at the time. And we did it in the gym. You could just come out for 5 days, and we'll teach when it's quiet, and you can shadow the rest of the time. I'll just show you what we do. We ended up doing back-to-back weeks. And at the end of that, people are like, now what? I'm like, now you go. You go away. You get out of my gym. And then it just became like you listen to the customer, right? So it became, at the time, it was really a gym membership for gym owners, is the way I described it. Is you had a membership that I'd help you with your programming too. I'd help you with your billing, and it's very loosely structured. There was just like, I had a little website, like a forum, like strengthcoach.com. It was on that same MemberGate platform. I had a little forum. I called it a 5'em because 5 is better than 4. And we just answered questions there. I put up an article. I just modeling. Ryan Lee was doing it first, and Mike bought it from him. I just modeled that, and then you could get a call with me, and then it just kind of blew up. It just kept growing, and it became so big that I had to set up a separate company. And at the time, it was called AlwynCosgrove.com, because I was writing articles for a couple of websites. I was selling stuff online, and then we started doing this online. And then, I'll fast forward, we got audited by the IRS as to why the travel expenses came with the .com. And as it had evolved, it evolved into the speaking and the traveling. So it morphed into Results Fitness University. And it just became a little more formalized. So people come, I think, for structure and syllabus in the beginning, and then they stay for accountability and community, right? So in the beginning, I was like, here's the things I think you need in place to run a successful results fitness style model in your place, right? Here's how I think it works. I think one-on-one makes a lot of money. It's just not scalable, and it's very vulnerable. I think large group does well too. You don't build, the results are never as good because you can't get that connection with people when you're doing large groups. And I found this sweet spot is this small group semi-private model. I think that's the strongest piece going forward. I think agreements in place, some billing agreements based on time, not based on number of sessions. Based on like a number of sessions is, if I could get the result in 8 sessions and you could get it in 16, why am I worth less? I'm better, right? So none of that stuff really doesn't make sense. So it became more formalized, and then it was a similar thing as like, all right, if I was to open a gym in New Jersey, what would it look like? What equipment would I get? How would I set it up? How would my billing look like? What would be my marketing? And get it all out of my head and put it into manuals, right? Now you put it into video, right? Then you put it into manuals, right? And it just became the same thing that if you really let, like, it's kind of like a lot of guys will come up and they want to be speakers on the Perform Better tour. Goes, is it just because you want to Like, that's all right if you just want to. But if people coming up and asking you a bunch of questions, and this is the easiest way to share your stuff, because that's different. Like, it's if you have something to offer and people are asking for it, pay attention, and they'll tell you what they want from you. They'll tell you they want you to present or write books, and maybe it's just to coach more people. Maybe it's to do some. You touched on some nutrition stuff there. Like, do you have a side nutrition business? Do you have something else? So I think it's just there's awareness theory, right? Like, how many yellow cars did you see this morning? You don't know because you weren't paying attention to yellow cars. But when you start paying attention to yellow cars, you'll see them. When you start paying attention to, like, what are your clients asking you? Like, I send an email out, just a general fitness email once a week. I have no idea what next week's one's going to be, because it's going to be based on a question a client asked me this week, and I'm going to write that. And if you just pay I got this from Shantae Cofield, who's on Instagram as the movement maestro, physical therapist who kind of moved more into social media stuff. And she just said, like, for growing your social media as a coach, document, don't create. Just document what you're doing. Here's some of my guys training. Here's a question I got asked this week, because you don't have to come up and create things. So I think when you think like that, the opportunities start to appear because of what people are asking. I didn't want to do a business consulting thing. Like, it was never on my mind. It just was, that's what they were asking me. Like, it's the same as, like, this podcast is, if this podcast was 10 years ago, we'd be talking about how long do you hold side planks for, right? That was what people would be asking, right? There's some debate in the industry as to whether you should hold a plank for 60 seconds or 2 sets of 30. Like, that was the stuff where people were really... We're making fun of it now, but if you weren't answering that then, you were missing the audience. That's what they wanted to know. How many sets and reps? What are the best leg exercises, right? And now it's kind of evolved a little bit. So I think there's just that, keep the radar up and be listening to the opportunities. Some days show up looking a lot like work, like setting up another company and having to spend time doing, coaching calls and things. So, but it just was. I wish I could say, Trey, that I had this master plan to teach others, and I'm like, man, from day one, I'm going to build this thing, and then I'm going to teach it, and I'm going to do this. It just was like, I just always wanted to just help the next person in front of me, and enough people started asking questions. I've always been good at, like, a lot of you have asked this, therefore let me teach it as a seminar. Let me do a course as it. I don't want to just tell everybody one-on-one, right? Like, so, and that became that. And it's just kind of that awareness of what I'll be aware of the next thing I'm supposed to do. And I've been getting asked a lot recently about, it'll be interesting. I've been asked a lot recently about presenting and how to present and how to, work a room and own the room and do certain things that I do. I think there's some interest there. I just think the live speaking engagements are going down, so the opportunities might not be there. So I don't know there, but you just pay attention, and your tribe will tell you what they want.
You've talked about being first generation. Nick Grantham getting a first job with the British national team, but they're not being full-time strength coaches. And that's not that long ago within your career, not just your lifetime, but within your career. And have you seen things go cyclical? We talk about speaking engagements going down. Do you think that pendulum swings back eventually, especially when we get post-COVID?
Most likely. I think everything will. I can tell you, I've done a bunch of online courses for education, and you end up, like, you look at your phone, right? You'll check out a little bit. Like, it's not the same as being live in the audience, right? You don't get the conversations in the hallways. You don't get that stuff happening, So I think it'll turn in. I remember teaching semi-private training in small group and getting, like, pushback. Like, this was the craziest shit everybody's heard. Now it's kind of norm, but it became norm. And then I feel it's kind of went, it started to go back to, I've got to explain it again. We've just picked up a couple of coaching clients on the East Coast who are doing one-on-one in large group, and they can't fit any more people in. They have to expand, but they do have room for clients if they switch to even 2 people in each session. They could double their client load. I feel like it's swung back that I've got to explain small group training again, right? I've got to explain what that is, and I suspect that in maybe the next 5 years, it'll become very common. And somebody will be making an advantage of doing one-on-one training. Like, I think the pendulum continues to swing. Nobody was doing weight training for fat loss or like I call it loaded cardio, like you're doing kind of higher rep kettlebell swing stuff. Nobody was doing that. No one was doing interval training, and everyone was only doing steady state. And then there was like no one was doing any kind of aerobic work. And now we've swung back to, it's not called steady state anymore. It's called zone 2, right? Zone 2 cardio. And I think interval training is kind of getting I don't want to say a bad rap. It's kind of getting overlooked. Mm-hmm. And that, as usual, the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? That I can remember writing articles when I was like, aerobic training for fat loss is absolutely worthless. I never really believed that. But you got to take a stance to get heard sometimes, right? Right? You got to be a little polarizing to be heard. Because I was said, hey, like, you know, maybe you should just do some weight training too. It's all right to keep doing cardio. Like, no one's listening. I mean, don't do any. Go over here. And then I never really felt that way. But similarly, I'm sure there's somebody who's like, never do interval training, doesn't really believe that either. So there is that pendulum swinging part. There is a little piece of that. I don't want to say marketing. It's just getting heard. Like, you've got to have a more extreme stance to be listened to. I wrote an article years ago and I called it like the pendulum swings back to the center, and just article just tanked. Nobody cared. Right? Just was this like middle of the road kind of, you know, very vanilla opinion on, you know, call it in Scotland, that was beige. Like, that's the most boring colour in the world, a beige opinion, right? But you weren't saying anything like of interest. So I think things are cyclical, and I think I heard Corey's talk on AI. There's been a move recently, I'm sure he'll agree, that people are trying to use AI to create. And I think I'm not afraid at all of AI. It's not artificial consciousness, but you should be afraid of me plus AI, right? Because I'm going to use it too, right? Like, I'm not going to ignore it. But I think like, hey, write me an article on fat loss. You're not going to survive with that. You write an article on fat loss and have it edit and rewrite it, because that's going to make you bulletproof. I think it might have replaced editors, because I used to send in articles to Men's Health and Men's Fitness, and the guys editing it, man, would turn what I put in into gold. And I've seen AI be able to do some of that. So I think you'll see it will get ignored for a while, and then it will get super adopted for a while, and the truth is somewhere. I think that I think everything is very cyclical. So I hope the live events come back. They went completely away, so they're back a little bit, right? But they're still not. I think I did 19 engagements in 2019, and this year I think I've got 3 booked. It's just I'm not even sure I want to go back to do 19 either. You know, that's, you know, a personal decision of mine. But I think you're right, as you'll find them. Like, I've seen machines coming back a lot recently. Guys promoting a lot of machine stuff.
It's funny too, Alan, because being that, you know, the inventor, if you will, godfather of semi-private personal training, is now you're seeing gyms go, that's the only thing they do. So that pendulum is swung all the way to one side, to where I've heard people call it group training is a red ocean. And like you said, and they're just looking at numbers from Orange Theory and F45 and those type of things. But somewhere in the middle is
it needs to be a little more on the customized end, right? Like, otherwise it's just this generic program, and you've got no advantage then. You've got no competitive advantage for that. I remember I was at a seminar, and it was a huge club in Reno, massive club in Reno, and I was there with I think it was a Tom Plummer seminar. Tom definitely said this. I don't know if he was just speaking, and he said to the owner of this giant club, he goes, the only gym that could come in and take any of your business is Alan's gym. He goes, because a small, more boutique style gym is the hole in your game, or a women's only gym is the hole in your game. He goes, you've got this overall beautiful big club that serves everybody, but a specialty place will take a piece. And to the owner's credit, he's like, that's what I'm going to open next. He's going to defend his own territory. So there is a place for, I think the continuum is one-on-one to large group, and it goes through what I call semi-private is like a little more customized. Small group is us just working out together. We change the weights. We all do the same thing. I think that will be the middle of the bell curve. But I think I've got one guy from a movie I worked on who he just buys all the sessions on my schedule, right? So he's happy to do that. But the challenge I find, the hole in that, that's nice. It's the same kind of, it's good money, but I don't have a lot of hours that's even possible. like I don't have space to put him in that is even possible. That's the downside with that. With large group retention, just it's naturally it's true. Big groups, the retention isn't as good, right? You don't get the same credit. So, but it doesn't mean these are no's, right? It just means that there are there that it is. You have to have like a little more customization, and you got to get a little more few people. Like you have to play that. But yeah, it is. I'm sure I didn't invent small group training. I'm sure guys worked out together before I came along, right? I think I might have been one of the first people to charge for it. Some of it happened by accident, by double booking people. Like I wasn't always thinking this idea. Like I was in the apple hit me on the head, and I was like, wow, small group private training. That's the future. Just two guys show up at once, and I was like, shit. Don't want to send them home. Let me just train them together. And they were like, this is cool. Can we do this again next week? I'm like, okay. And then it just kind of evolves. But I think the things that I feel like maybe I brought to the industry was more of a value to the programming part. That I've said before, if your business is on the line and you had to get the next program written, it had to be scored 100 out of 100 by a jury of your peers, but you could bring in anybody you want to help you, anybody in the industry to help you. Right? If you had to write the perfect program for somebody who moves poorly, you could bring in Gray if you want, right? You could bring in anybody. Or you just have to crush the next session, and it has to be world-class, high energy, right? So one end, you might be thinking Stu Miguel or Gray Cook. On the other end, you're thinking Martin or Todd. Neither one is superior. It's just something's a different skill set. And my idea is that stop looking for people who maybe at both, and start hiring people who are great at programming, hiring people who are great coaches, and they support each other. Right? So I think that's something that I think I'm fairly sure no one was doing beforehand. Small groups just a delivery system. Like I said, like you go to a Perform Better, they don't tell you how many are going to be in the room. You just know you got a seat. That's my idea is that if you're going to join my gym and train, you're going to get the best product I know how to deliver. How I deliver it is up to your schedule and my schedule. Like that's all. Like I've got a spot at 10:30 and I got another spot at 10:30. I've always felt this, right? That the very first guy who was a trainer, if it was Trey, somebody came to Trey and said, Trey, will you train me? And he goes, yeah, come in tomorrow at 9. And then somebody else comes up and goes, Trey, will you train me as well? And he said, yeah, come in tomorrow at 10. If we had said come in at 9 at the same time, we would never have had one-on-one training. So when we understand that, right, we understand it was made up just by chance. There was no science testing this. Like one of my friends, J.L. Holdsworth, who's a powerlifter actually, he talks about the parallel to the floor thing in powerlifting. If you look at the knee and hip angle, it's parallel to the floor. But if you push forward from the ankle so the knee goes over the toes, you're hitting the same joint angles, but that would be not correct in a power lift, but is the same joint angles in the body, so you would get the same training effect. So he has some of his athletes squat higher. He goes, you have to understand the parallel to the floor came up by made up rules to judge something. There wasn't any physiology on that, right? And I have that with mixed martial arts. And why did they wear gloves in the UFC? It's not to protect the hands because it's illegal to put anything on your foot to protect your foot. It's not to protect the opponent because you can elbow him in the face, knee him in the face, and hit him with your shin in the face. There's no reason for it other than when you understand how the rules came around, where they took boxing rules and adapted it. So we start with the idea that the rules in the first place were completely arbitrary, right? The idea of one-on-one training just happened because one guy booked two people separately, right? If he'd have booked them together, we would never have had it. So when you start thinking like that, you can start questioning, why do we do things this way, right? Why do we do 10-session packages? I realized for a while that the only people that could buy big packages from me and got the discount don't need the discount. They could afford to give me a lot of money. But I got one football player, high school kid, coming in, working his part-time job and giving me cash for Monday session and cash. The only guy paying one at a time is the one guy who needs a break. So I was like, you know what? Sign up for a year and you can do it in installments. Became an annual membership for training. So it's not anything like, I think you go back to how did this thing come around? and then let me if there was science behind it, let's follow that. Let's see where it came from. But a lot of the times that's not what happened. It's just kind of arbitrary thinking.
Alwyn, you talked a few minutes ago coming up to people after a talk or hallway conversations or post social. If you've been to a Perform Better, sitting around at the bar having a drink, and that's what the Coaches Unscripted podcast is. That's what the essence of this is to be able to have these conversations long form. Because if I've got these questions, Corey's got these questions, then I know other people have these questions. But that's the beauty part of the conversation. And I just want to thank you so much for joining us and for doing this, because I'm hosting this thing, but I got a whole page full of notes that I've been writing down. So you are one of the top guys for a reason, not just for, those ripple effects that you've imparted on other people and the industry, but just for who you are and what you mean, and we appreciate that.
Thank you very much, guys. And as I said earlier, no need to thank me, just pay it forward.
Amen. Well, every day, we're all still on the floor coaching, so we've got to get out here in a little while and try to pay it forward a little bit. But we thank you so much for being a part of this, and we thank you all for joining us on the Coaches Unscripted podcast. We hope today's stories have inspired and empowered you in your coaching journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow coaches. Connect with us on Instagram at the Coaches Unscripted Podcast to continue the conversation and to stay updated on future episodes. Follow Alwyn Cosgrove on Instagram at Alwyn Cosgrove, ALWYN COSGROVE. Alwyn, we thank you again for joining us. Until next time, for Corey Smallwood, I'm Trey Belcher. Keep coaching from the heart and building strong communities.
Cheers, guys.